I'm Kirk. I'm one of the counselors with Cornerstone. Welcome to the Ask It Basket panel. I can't promise. So this is an Ask It Basket panel on recovery. This is not an Ask It Basket panel on how to make the program better. Okay? The how to make the program better panel is, you can do that like at climbers or in your family session. I'm not really the guy for like that department, and neither are these people. But there is a tremendous amount of recovery experience and Cornerstone recovery experience on this panel today. And so we're all just gonna start with introducing ourselves and what your relationship is with the program and with recovery. So I work for Cornerstone. I'm one of the founders. This is the other one. Brenda and I founded Cornerstone in 1999. It's very emotional for me coming back to the Saturday meeting. I've been running a meeting in one form or another at this church on Saturdays since 1995. And we were joking about it beforehand, but I remember the first time in this room, this is where the kids met, and we'd have the tables set up, and when we had the first meeting we ever had where we had 10 kids at a meeting, and we were like, what are we gonna do, man? There's so many kids in the program. And then the first meeting that we had where there were kids that sat all the way around the table, and we didn't have spaces for them. There were so many kids there. We were like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna set up the meeting? And so, to come in here and see, 40 or 50 parents sitting in this room is, it's just cool. It's cool, it's inspiring, and it's affirming to me about the recovery process. I'm in recovery myself, as well as doing this professionally. I've been active in 12-step recovery for over 30 years now. Still active in working the steps and working with a sponsor. And a lot of my recovery work is focused on steps 10, 11, and 12, and has been for the last 4 or 5 years. So go ahead.
Hi, I'm Brenda. I'm Brenda. I started coming to meetings for my adolescent son when he was 14. He is now 38. And by the grace of God, he is alive, because most that have lived his life of addiction are not. I am still in recovery. I have a sponsor. I go to meetings at least twice a week. Like Kirk said, when we had 5 parents, it was a big meeting. And when we had to start taking 2 rooms upstairs in the other building and negotiating with the church that we needed more space, it was oh my gosh, we need more rooms. We would have 50, 60, sometimes 70 plus parents at Saturday meetings, and it was awesome. So to be back at this church on a Saturday is, it brings back a flood of memories. Y'all are all brand new faces, and yet I see all the faces I've seen. I know none of you, and yet I know all of you. So I'm happy to be here.
Hold the mic closer to your mouth, all of you, especially the girls. Yeah, thank you.
I'm Tammy.
Hey, Tammy.
So I got sober back in 2007, and 6 months later found out my son was doing drugs. So that was like a God moment. Thank goodness I got sober in time to see that my son was in real trouble. So we made it into Cornerstone in handcuffs. Pretty much, my son was in handcuffs. We sent him to Sundown, and then he came to Cornerstone. That was in 2007 or 8. I don't know. Anyway, thank God for recovery is what I have to say to you. I love Cornerstone, and I'm very passionate about Cornerstone, so I'm excited about being here and talking about it and seeing new faces who I know you're just going to have a miracle happen. And I'm excited for you guys too. So thank you guys.
Aubrey, what were you saying?
Try not to bang the table. Try not to touch the table. I'm sorry, I'm
Okay, that's fine.
micromanaging here.
That's fine.
Hi, I'm
I'm only gonna bang it when I make a point.
I joined Cornerstone in 2019, early in the year, and I awakened this April, and my whole family got involved in the program. I am still active in my recovery. I work with a sponsor and work the steps, and I sponsor within Cornerstone. I came into Cornerstone after having been to treatment twice in a mental hospital, and I'm really grateful for Cornerstone, and it's really more than just changed my life, but really affected my entire family and the way that we operate as a family, and so I'm very grateful for that.
Cool. All right, we're gonna just jump right into it. So bear with me with some of the stuff. Why should I drive all the way to the Saturday meeting? Why is it necessary if I'm going to everything else? Climbers, Thursdays, meeting with my sponsor. What was your experience like for having to travel for your recovery? Was it worth it? What did you do when you couldn't make a Saturday meeting because of your job, etc.? So I don't want to, and we got some dudes in here that like on the panel that had to do a lot of traveling with their recovery. So I'm a big believer in commitment. I'm a big believer in being willing to go to any lengths, but I also understand reality sometimes, and that so it's like, what do you do if you can't make a Saturday meeting because of your job or other kids? Well, you can't make a Saturday meeting because of your job and your other kids. Totally cool. Like, it's like, there's a balance in there. You got to take care of your other kids, but am I being honest with myself? A lot of times it's not a binary choice with me, with my commitments, with planning, execution, things like that. It's like I can chew bubble gum and walk at the same time. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes it's not a binary choice. Why should I drive all the way to the Saturday meeting? Because it's a helpful meeting for you. And that gets into the willingness question. And it's like, and it also gets into I don't want to talk forever, but it also gets into a level of denial. Denial is part of this addiction. Denial is part of the substance abuse, addiction, the mental illness aspect. And what denial says is, it's not my problem. Denial says, you did all this shit. You hurt the family. You need to work harder. Okay? That's what denial says. Denial says, I still need to do me. Okay? Well, I got my things, my comfort zone, my stuff. And it's like, and I'm not beating anybody up for that, but what denial does is it perpetuates the sickness. All right? It perpetuates things not getting better. This is not something that can be fixed. This is not something that can be fixed. This is a lifestyle. There needs to be a break in the dam, and the dynamics in the family need to change if you're going to have a chance at sustainable recovery. And so it's like, whether it's driving to the Saturday meeting or going to a parent retreat or going to step study, it's like, there's some things I can do and there's some things I can't do, and that's okay. But am I looking in the mirror and answering those things honestly, or am I looking for an out? Am I opting out with that stuff? Some of the drivers that drove all the time can talk to this question too.
Well, I drove in from the Woodlands every Saturday, but not in the beginning. I'll just tell you that, because I felt so overwhelmed, and I was going to all the other meetings, but I thought, Saturdays, I don't need to go, right? Well, at some point, Kirk told me, Ben has not yet bought into the program. And then I went to a ladies' retreat, and somebody wrote we were supposed to give an affirmation to all our fellow ladies, and one of mine said, you seem like a nice enough person, but you haven't committed, which pissed me off. I mean, it pissed me off, because I thought, all this stuff I'm doing and I haven't bought in, right? So I started coming to the Saturday meetings, and what I realized was that my tribe was bigger than I thought it was, for one thing. And I'll tell you too that at our meetings in the Woodlands, a lot of times we kind of heard the same things over and over. And it was so refreshing to come to the Saturday meetings, see the rest of my tribe, hear what the rest of my tribe had to say, and helped me grow. And it helped me know how supported I really was, because we became friends. We used to go to lunch after Saturday meetings. I don't know if y'all do that, but that was a big time. But what I learned is that once I further committed, and don't think for a second that your kid doesn't know whether or not you go to the Saturday meetings, because they're looking, they are watching. And when my son would see us, he'd sometimes wave, sometimes he'd come over. But once I got really committed, guess what? So did my son. So yeah, it's important for a lot of reasons. Guess what? Some of the other parents need to hear what you have to say. It's a cool deal. Do as many things as you can. They're tugging on me.
That's going to be a common theme with these two. They got a lot to say.
Okay, I drove from Sugar Land, and we didn't have meetings back there then. So our meetings were either in the medical center or here at this church. I left a 3-year-old daughter at home a lot. I would like to focus on that from a standpoint that you do have to find balance. There are things that she tells me now as a 28-year-old that, yeah, I got a pang of guilt because I was trying to save my son. And he was not at the meetings much because he was often in treatment or somewhere else. So I did kind of have that denial thing that Kirk mentioned going on, like, why the hell am I sitting here? I'm the only one. You know, I was often that one that didn't have a kid in the program. And so at some point, I kind of got, probably from him, the same type of message. You need to commit. And once I did, and I started doing parent retreats and running parent retreats and having mom retreats and having moms over at the house. And I was never the mom that did all that, but I was involved enough that it kept me really grounded, and it aided my recovery. I found out why. When I related my recovery and put my son's recovery over in another box, and I knew that he had to get it for himself, but that I could take my recovery and apply it to my life, and that if I was lucky and God was there for him, he would get it in his time. And so, yeah, the travel is a pain in the ass, but it's totally worth it. You didn't know.
So my mom not only drove to the Saturday meeting, but we live about 50 minutes away, and so she drove me to outpatient and back every single day. Well, all the outpatient days, and then also to the Saturday meeting. And for myself, like Kirk mentioned, it was definitely like a thing that I was like, okay, I have to show myself that it doesn't matter what it takes, like this is more worth it. But from a kid's standpoint, for a long time, one thing that I really struggled with coming in with my mom and I's relationship was shit, and not great, sorry.
That's all right.
And for a long, I just felt that I was always pointed to as the reason that there were issues, and that my mom had kind of quit on putting effort into fixing things, and so left it up to me. And so when my mom started coming to Saturday meetings and started driving me to outpatient every day, even though I did not tell her this for a long time, it kind of finally felt like she wasn't quitting and she didn't leave it up to me to fix everything. Like it was the first step in me feeling like she actually acknowledged that, not that anything was her fault, but that she had a part to play. And so it really changed the face of my relationship with her long term, because I saw that she wasn't quitting on me, and I felt for a long time like she was. And so it really went a long way for me that my mom was also willing to drive 50 minutes every day into the Saturday meeting and actually putting effort in. So that's what I've got.
And then just the other thing that I'd add is, or like a couple other things, is that it's easy to commit to something if the outcome is guaranteed. All right, like I'm all about it, right? And this is real commitment, though, the outcome isn't guaranteed. You have to, being committed to the process, being committed to the work without knowing what the outcome is going to be. Because the outcome could be, this picturesque Cornerstone story, where, Tammy's son is sober like 12 years later, or Brenda's story where her son's been in and out of jail and rehabs for like the last 20 years. But it's easy to commit to something when the outcome's guaranteed. We're not here to guarantee. And that still feeds into that like denial prospect or a denial perspective, because it's, we want it fixed. I'll commit to it if it's guaranteed to fix the problem. Well, we can't do that. And anybody that's selling you that, run. The reality of the mental health issue and the addiction issues is the most successful program out there, for real, is AA. And their success rate is at best 7%. Okay? So anybody that's selling you a real guaranteed answer, or you can drink normally again, or this or that, you need to run away from them as fast as you can. The best people are the people that look at you and say, you better be ready to work really, really, really hard. And this is going to suck for a while. And that's not what you want to hear, but that's the truth. What you really want to hear is the truth. So next question. We got to go faster. That was like 20 minutes for one question. Why should I go to outside meetings? I think it's really important to go to outside meetings. It's really important for me to go to outside meetings and outside experiences, outside positive recovery-esque experiences, because it's really important for me, because I can hear the same thing at meetings and it's like from the same voices, and it like won't penetrate like my dome because I'm stupid. Okay, I need to hear things in different ways from different voices that remind me that I need to work on myself, that I'm not a victim, to be able to look in the mirror and start with ownership. And those are the themes in my life that have led to me having a better relationship with myself. And when I just stay in the same meetings, when I stay in this bubble, or I just get into the trend of going to, the same AA group that's kind of small, that I'll just I'll filter it out. I'll tune it out to a certain extent. And that's human nature to a certain extent, because I'll gravitate, we all gravitate towards what's comfortable for us. All right. And it's like, I want to go to meetings where it's like, I know everybody, where I'm a little bit comfortable. And, so yeah, I do think it's really, I don't think it's important to do it all the time, but yeah, I do think it's important to go to outside meetings, especially like conventions and retreats and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think at the very beginning, you want to stay rooted in and gain what you need to gain, because the parent meetings are very, very explicit, and you're going to learn what you need to learn. If your goal is to awaken and you're going to really stay in recovery, you will need to venture out, whether that's Al-Anon, whether that's OA, whatever. You will find what speaks to you, and you will continue to need it. This doesn't end. Not when your kid turns 18, not when he's 21. It doesn't end. And if it's not your kid, it's probably a spouse or a sibling or a relative. You're going to need it.
You got anything?
I can't add
You got anything? You don't have to add anything, but you can. I love this question. Whoever wrote this question, props. Did you slide this in front of me on purpose? That's fine. You have permission to do that. What does it mean when you always start to cry when sharing in group meetings? So annoying. So annoying. And what can I do to help? It is a great question. And all right, so the second part of this question is so annoying. BS. That's awesome. If you start out crying, like, we live in a world where it's like everybody's full of shit, superficial, PC, woke. So somebody that starts out with vulnerability and realness and authentic pain, thank you. Isn't that why we're here? because we're broken, because we got a lot of pain, right? And so owning that, like thank you, whoever wrote that. If you're crying, every group that I run, if somebody starts out with crying, you're tenfold helping me do my job. You know, so much of what I'm doing, what I do on a daily basis, is I'm trying to get people just to honestly look at themselves. And part of the honest assessment, it's like, yeah, there's some pain, there's some shame, and there's some good qualities. So I hate the second part of the question. So annoying? Nah, it's not annoying. It's the opposite annoying. It actually gives people permission to be real.
So,
Hallelujah.
I don't know if when you guys do awakenings, if y'all still do this, but back when we did awakenings, you got a gift, right? So my gift was from Kirk, and it was the Costco size of Kleenex. Yeah. I don't know. I think I cried in every meeting for like the first 2 years. And so what do you learn about that as you go through your own recovery is that, you know, this is painful stuff. This is our kid. We're losing our child. We don't know what to do. And there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of pain. And you're going to get through it and let it shine. This is your group. These are your people. If you can't cry here, what I found, this was the opportunity I had to be able to talk and share with other people that actually understood what I was going through. And when I could finally stop crying, I knew I was growing and I was letting go of some of the shit that really wasn't mine.
Can add.
I don't even remember what the question was. Oh, you could talk about it. You're kind of a crybaby.
Yeah. Yeah, I cry a lot. Thank you.
Yep.
I was really I mean, as I think most of us are, like really emotionally turned off when I came in, and I also really did not want to come across, I didn't want to show that anything could hurt me, or like that I was hurt by my family or by the decisions I'd made or whatever. And I think, as Brenda said, when I started to cry a lot, it was like, oh, I actually care about something, and this actually means something. And I was letting myself be alive again. And I didn't want to be like that for a long time. And same with my mom. Like whenever I saw my mom cry, I was like, oh, she actually means it. And it was really new and cool for me to see my mom be emotional, and it allowed me to kind of reciprocate that and be emotional with her and like be honest and vulnerable with her.
What do I do if my kid relapses? I can tell you like a lot of what to not do. All right, like one of the things that you don't want to do that is a very typical reaction in here and almost everywhere else in the whole world is don't respond out of anger. Okay, there's a difference between being firm and tough and loving, which is one of the benefits of actually really being engaged in 12-step recovery, is it lets us navigate crisis. What happens to most of us in crisis when we don't have that is we're on the emotional roller coaster. And it's response, not reaction, response. Because there's also not like a total cookie cutter answer to that. Sometimes it's back to treatment. Sometimes it's out of the house. Sometimes it's get a desire chip and fix it. Okay, and all relapse should be taken very, very, very seriously. Whether that's like with substance abuse, if they have other addictions, with self-harm, with food, okay, an emotional relapse. But the other aspect of relapse that I look at, you know, like from what I do on a daily basis, that is way more important than the actual relapse is because there's really two types of relapse that I deal with. There's somebody relapses on their own, they self-report it. That's freaking opportunity for growth. I love that. I love it. They're self-reporting. It means they have a conscience. They have some shame. And they want help. I love that. I love the self-reporting stuff. The other part of it is, the other kind of relapse is when it's like they get busted. There's all these other folks involved in it, co-signing, the toxicity where their peer groups starting to erode and get real toxic. That's a whole different issue, all right? And that's much, much, much more dangerous. And is more likely to continue. And it's like, that's where it's like, you want to make sure you're bringing a gun to a gunfight, man, because you're in a gunfight then.
Well, my kid was a constant relapser. I'm not one, if you haven't figured it out yet. And sometimes I knew, and sometimes he was so good at that manipulation. He had psychologists fooled, he had psychiatrists fooled, he had me fooled. So what I can tell you is this: one, what do you do if your kid relapses? You buckle down on your own program. Two, if your gut is telling you something, listen to it.
Always.
People ask me now, how's Ryan doing? I don't know. I don't know. I go by my gut. I can hear his words. I don't always know. I don't always believe. But when my gut tells me how he is, I know.
Yeah, I think you have to respond to it. And like Kirk said, no, certainly don't want to shame them or scold them or whatever, but you got to figure out what the next right action is. For us, we had to send Ben to the hospital and got all tested and make sure he was going to be all right and that kind of thing. But at some point, we figured out that Ben could not stay sober in the Woodlands. He could not do it. And so, because he just had too many people. As soon as he got out of rehab, those people showed up at our door and said, "We heard Ben's home." I thought I was gonna kill him, But so they were always there and they were always waiting. And so Ben, as it turned out, Ben couldn't live with us in the Woodlands. And so he had to live with a host family for the entire time.
And sober living.
And sober living. That reminds me of the time I also said he went to the men's club. But what's it really called? The men's center.
And last. Did he go to Last Chance Recovery too?
That's where he finally got sober. And to
Yeah.
this day,
Yeah.
he has a framed picture of Last Chance on his wall to remember how he got there. You know what I mean? And so, yeah. But I'll tell you, it killed me to have to not ever let him, live at our house again. It almost killed me, and I can cry about that right now. But the thing is, it's what it took for him. And it's different for every kid. And you got to really listen hard to the professionals who know, because believe me, I did not want that to happen, but it did, and it all worked out. So you got to be ready to go to every possible end.
You got anything?
Yeah,
quick.
I've relapsed in Cornerstone and out of before I came into Cornerstone, and then I've had friends and sponsees and family members relapse. And the biggest thing that I have experienced is every time asking myself what I can do differently. Especially a really close friend of mine didn't necessarily relapse, but showed strong relapse behavior, and it was one of the harder things to actually have to be a real friend through that. But a lot of what I've asked myself anytime, and then one of my sponsees went back out recently or left the group recently, and every time I think what I've asked myself is what can I do differently? Not because anything is my responsibility, but I think there's always some way I can do something differently to be a better friend or a better sponsor or do better in my own recovery, and see what did or didn't work for me.
Cool. Do you have any advice for parents whose kids turn 18 in the program? Are there different boundaries? From my perspective, the short answer to that is hell no. It's like you don't have shots for an adolescent and shots for an adult. The shots are for you. That's what the shots are about. The shots are about, this is what we need for our home to be stable and healthy, right? So regardless of their age, it's like, you can't lie to me. You can't use drugs here. We're not going to lie to each other. We're committed to honesty, right? And that's the part of the denial narrative is the shots become kind of this parental manipulation kind of tool to control your child. That's BS. It's like, starts with ownership. How do we want our home to be? What boundaries are we going to have on our home? What kind of work are we going to be committed to? What kind of example are we going to set for our child and for ourselves doing this? And so the short answer to me for this is no. And actually, when they turn 18, it actually opens up more options for you. Less controlling ones. Like when they're an adolescent, you can still control it more.
My son did turn 18 when he was in the program, and I guess for me what it did, because as I said earlier, they're not going to change. They're going to get healthier if they're in recovery, but they're still going to be addicts. For me, what it did was for me to be able to say, no, I don't want you as my roommate. If you don't want to follow these rules, that's cool, but you don't get to live in my house. So he chose not to at a very young age, probably right after he turned 18, actually. And he never came back to my house. But we have had a good ebb and flow relationship. But because he has spent most of his life in addiction, active addiction, we haven't had to live together. So I do think the boundaries get a little different. But I think you just have to be really clear and honest, because I agree 100% with Kirk that we want to control. We want a different outcome. We want them to be successful, and we still have our vision of what we want them to do with their adult life, because damn it, we had it planned out, and they're not doing it if they're still in active addiction.
I love this question. What are the small changes that can be made on a daily, regular basis that make the most difference? Okay, whoever wrote this question is really smart, because that is where actual change takes place. That's how stuff changes. Stuff changes through the small daily things. Like for me, I have some things that I do daily or weekly that are like unmovable for me, that are very positive. Like starting my day in the morning with journaling on the day by day. And it's like, I've never gotten too cool for school for that. I've never outgrown it. What happened with a lot of these guys, a lot of the alumni, is they kind of like get a few years sober and they get think they got all the answers and become real woke, and they get really away from surface and being willing to do the small things. All right? Because they already know. They think it's an intellectual thing. It's not an intellectual thing. It's an emotionally driven illness that I have that is driven by emotion. And so doing things like starting my day with journaling, practicing yoga, on bike riding, me going to my home group on a regular basis, these small things that I'm committed to that I know I need to invest in to get something out of has been the thing that's allowed me to have sustainable change through all these years. And, because most of us are looking for, and we live in a culture that is looking for the home run, the quick fix, the wham, bam, instant, lose all the weight overnight, family gets fixed in 30 days at a treatment center. And it's like, guys, again, that stuff doesn't exist to my knowledge. But very good question.
I'm not sure what the question said now.
What small changes have led to big differences?
Yeah, I think it has to do with my commitment. and being willing to look at myself and my part. But as far as self-care, a lot of my self-care while I was in this program had to do with me not looking at the people in Cornerstone as just the people at Cornerstone, but to actually make relationships with them and consider them my friends. And that's how I look forward to every meeting. I spent time with my Cornerstone people even when we weren't having meetings. We were talking on the phone, we were having fun. It became fun instead of a chore. So that was a big deal for me.
I think the biggest thing for me, I'm really great at thinking about myself. I'm really, really good at being self-centered. And so the biggest thing for me that I still like, especially after awakening, it's really easy, or it was easy for me, I should only speak for myself, to once it wasn't like a quote unquote requirement to kind of for a little while forget to think about other people. So now every day, and I was a lot better about it when I was in Cornerstone, now have worked on getting back to it. It's like, how can I think about somebody else? Because I know that regardless of what goes on, when I do think about somebody else, I know that things are gonna change for the better. And it gets me out of worrying about myself or what I can do or blah, blah, blah. Because I know when I'm impacting or like even just listening to other people or whatever, it starts to make a difference in how I operate in my own life.
The other thing that I know for the three of us that we've done, and I don't even know if it's like real conscious, but so these small things, daily or weekly, I turn them into service positions for me, okay? Where it's like, I gotta be there. Like, I gotta be there because I made a commitment to other people. And so that way, like, it doesn't create any like wiggle room for me to get out of it, being like, I'm tired today, or somebody else can run it, or I already paid my dues, or I've done my part, right? That's all part of that comfort zone, rational, well-crafted excuse. A well-crafted excuse is an excuse. Don't you listen to them all day long from your kids? Right? I do. I listen to them all day long from everybody. And the only thing I hear is well-crafted excuse. I don't hear all that. I just hear, oh, that's their excuse. What if I don't think my kid's other parent is a winner for them? Brenda?
Well, it's tough, right? There's the legal ramifications. There's the fact that they're still their parent. So what I did was try to be very factual in my son's disease and the level of his addiction and mental illness, and prayed a lot that my ex would honor things that were in his best interest. And when that didn't happen, I took the chances on the legal ramifications and did not allow him to be around him because it was not in his best interest. And that was what I did.
Yeah, you can talk about that from your perspective.
Yeah. So my dad is not in the program, and he's very mentally ill and struggles a lot he's been in and out of jail now for a couple of years, and is currently going through a court case, and struggles with abuse, or like substance abuse. And before I moved home from Florida to get sober, I used him a lot as, I knew that I didn't care how mean he was or how he acted or whatever. Well, I did, but all of that was worth it to me because I knew that I could kind of get whatever I wanted. And so moving home, when my mom was like, no, like you can't see him, at first it's really complicated, and I still definitely struggle with it, and like the way that I want to have a relationship with him. But eventually I saw for myself that it hurt me more than helped me to be around him or to have like contact with him. But and for a long time I like was peeved at my mom for thinking that she should have control over my relationship with my other parent. But in the long run, I understand now, like, that was her protecting me. And also there were, it became an opportunity for me to trust her, which I still am not I work on, but was really hard. And ultimately, like, in the long run, eventually she was like, okay, yeah, it's up to you, like, when some of that trust was built. But it showed me, once I was in the place to make that decision for myself, that sorry, I have a hard time talking about my dad. That it regardless of whether they're family or not, like, I didn't want to be in a position where I was just gonna get hurt. So that's what I got.
Cool. This is also a good question. What do I do or say when my kid wants to quit Cornerstone? So the first thing is remove Cornerstone from it. Most of your kids, like myself, had a tremendously long history of quitting everything we ever started. All right? Like, almost all the kids, where it's like they love to start things, and as soon as it gets uncomfortable or hard, they love to quit. And so when I was like 15, 16, 17, and I was living at home, and I was like just getting sober, I was like, Dad, I'm quitting high school. This is BS. I'm just gonna get my GED. And my dad looked at me and said, that's cool, and you're moving out. All right? It's very important to understand where that quitting is part of it, right? Like, there's one of my jobs is, if I'm doing it well, is I'm gonna help people learn how to be successful, to work on things, to learn how to finish things. Most of these guys are not very good at finishing what they start. This process of getting into recovery is uncomfortable. It's hard. Like changing your peer group, getting honest, building your self-esteem, giving up, for the kids, giving up control of running the family. Because most of them have been running the family forever. It's hard to do. And so if you don't get a question, if you don't get pushed on that sometimes, you probably don't got shots. And so if you don't respond to it with, like I said, without understanding what the question is, and that's like where you want to be calm and tough. Tammy?
Well,
You dealt with quitting a lot.
yes, Ben quit all the time. But at one point, and I'm not sure this was the right thing to do, but at one point we said, okay, we'll go to one other place and check it out. Because he tried to make it seem like it was Cornerstone that he didn't want to do. But what he really didn't want to do was recovery. And he didn't think he had a problem. But everything showed that he had a serious problem. So we said, okay, we'll go to one place and only one place to check it out and see if you'll feel better about it. We went to it. He immediately said, no, I don't want to do that program either. I said, well, guess what? And Mike and I was very fortunate that my husband and I supported each other. We were united the whole time. And so we said, no, okay, we're not going to that place. You're going to Cornerstone, or you're moving out. You're moving out. And so he reluctantly did, go to Cornerstone. And in the end, that was the perfect thing that he needed, because there's other programs, but this one is the one that he needed and that we needed, because it was strong. And we knew that the leaders were strong and had seen just about everything. So I don't know that that was a good idea for us to even look at another place, because in my heart I knew this was the right place, but we felt like we had to somehow look like we were working with them. Guess what? You don't have to look like that. You don't now, talking about it now, you don't ever have to do it. You're in charge. And so pretty much after that, that's the way we handled things.
I'm just going to move it along some. How do we rebuild trust after some dishonest behavior? How do we as parents trust again? You can start that one. I'll finish it.
Okay, how do we as parents trust again? Slowly, but you get there. And people are people, and they're human, and they're gonna screw up, and our friends screw up, and our families screw up, and our kids will definitely screw up. Try not to judge them too harshly. They're already walking around with a lot of shame and pain and addiction and their own guilt. But give yourself some grace to get there. You will. And you get there by working your own program and sticking with people that can hold you up. And again, I think I've said this earlier, don't spend a lot of time talking to people that don't know what you're going through. It just doesn't serve you well. People in these rooms, they know what you're going through. It may not be, just because my kid wasn't the star of Cornerstone and didn't walk in and embrace it, I still got a lot out of it. And I will tell you this, that in the era that I was here, even today, the people that were my friends, they still, and this is 10 years removed at least, they still talk about the fact that the years that they were in Cornerstone were the best years that they had. The friends that they made, the husbands, the wives. I mean, it was almost like they didn't know what to do after they left Cornerstone, because we had so many functions, and parents, husbands, wives got along so well because they became united. And so there is trust after dishonesty. You just take it slow and you don't force it, and trust your gut.
I got a little bit different perspective. How do you rebuild trust after dishonest behavior? When you're at an AA meeting with them and they're picking up their 5-year chip, that's when you should start trusting again. Okay? Until then, you're naive. You're out of your mind. You're naive. That trust is about you, and you want to feel better, and kumbaya and all that stuff. All right, like you are out of your mind. One of the reasons Tammy is here today is because I'm just going to share. She called me up a couple weeks ago, and some clients we worked with in the Woodlands group 7-8 years ago. We had 2 clients die in within a week. Totally different. One self-inflicted gunshot wound. Another one was accidental overdose. Accidental overdoses, or accidental drug overdoses in the United States in 2020 was 93,000 people. Okay? That number is staggering. All right? So it's like, so when should you start trust? When they're picking up their 5-year chip. Because according to the Betty Ford Hazelton Foundation, the number one resource on alcoholism in the world, that is what early recovery is one's from day 1 to 5 years. Anything short of that doesn't mean you can't love them, be nice to them, right, etc. But when you start playing nice, wanting to get back to normal, not taking it seriously, all right, okay, like we're just here to give suggestions and to tell you what we've seen work in the past and what we see. The other thing with all these deaths, besides them being utterly tragic, every single one of them was preventable. Every single one of them was preventable. And the 2 most important factors, and they're starting to become a third, but the 2 most important factors in long-term recovery is 1, the family system changes. That's number 1. And number 2 is access to a positive peer group. All right? Those 2 things are in play for the whole time. You got really good chances. It's not right medication. It's not, having the special therapist, whatever. Okay, it's not the moving on, being on the merry-go-round of residential treatment centers. Moving from one halfway house to another treatment center, which is what most of these guys did. It's those two things. The third thing that is starting to creep in there, and it kind of is, it's part of the peer group thing, is the crap on social media. That's becoming such a huge part of their acceptance and identity as well. And then how to use you got anything you want to add to that? Okay.
I have one thing.
Go ahead. Getting on the soapbox now, guys.
No,
Better
I'm just
look
gonna
out.
say,
We're getting warmed up.
I'm just going to say one sentence because it pissed me off so much for all these kids to die, in the end. But understand this, hear this. One thing that you can do, the most important thing that you can do, is be involved. Parental involvement in this program is giant, and it's the best case scenario that your kid has. And even still, it might not work, but it's the best chance your kid has. Take that seriously, for real.
The thing that
I'm gonna say
yeah,
something
go
too.
ahead.
Mental illness is real. It is real as fuck. And if your child is also addicted to a drug, which came first? Their choice to self-medicate or their addiction? I'm very, very strong in learning just about as much about addiction, but you have to understand mental illness, and you cannot disqualify or step away from depression and think that, oh, they'll get through it. Sometimes they will. Most of the time, they will. Most of you in this room, your child is acting out, they're abusing, maybe overusing drugs, alcohol, and most of them, they're probably going to be okay. They're going to go on and they're going to graduate and they're going to do what you want them to do and they're going to have kids and they're going to live their life. Some of them aren't. Some of them are going to struggle daily with waking up, holding a job, getting sober, and learning how to live what we think is a normal life. If you have a gut instinct that that is your child, pay attention. Get yourself aware and make sure you know what the signs of potential suicide are.
I mean, the other thing about death, when Brenda knew me, I was like super duper into skydiving, spent years and years skydiving. And the thing about being in the skydiving community and hanging out at local drop zones is you knew somebody was going to die. Like that's part of the thing. You knew somebody was going to die. But everybody would look around and go, wonder who that's going to be. That's how it works in recovery too. It's somebody's kid in this room within 5 years, at least one, is going to be dead. Statistically, guaranteed. There's 30 years of experience talking to you. And everybody, when they hear that, they go, wow, that's really serious. And then the next thing that goes through their head is they go, well, maybe that's Tammy's kid or Brenda's kid, because we never think it's going to be us. Right? Everybody thinks like that. That's part of survival. That's how everybody thinks. So, and it's just, and again, that goes to the denial narrative, where we're through it or we're stable now. We got a year or two of doing good. Man, you're smoking crack thinking like that. Early recovery, day 1 to 5 years of sustained recovery. Most of these guys, when they relapse at 2-3 years sober, you know who they're relapsing with? All the people they met in their treatment centers. It ain't the old friends. It's the dudes they got sober with, right? The too cool for school guys that stopped doing the work. They're on that slow road to relapse. Losers. The whole thing here, and I know we got to wrap it up soon, is so this so much of this that I put my energy into today and have over the years, and Brenda and Tammy have put a tremendous amount of energy into this, is trying to create communities, small communities where positive stuff is going on. All right, whether it's softball, wilderness trips, bike rides, Tuesday yoga, whatever. These small positive communities, community. These guys all need access to community. They want to be a part of something. They're going to be a part of something. Doesn't mean it's going to be positive, but they need to have access. We need to be a part of something. Most of us felt very alone prior to walking into these rooms. Access to a community, investment in a community. The more you invest in a community, the likelihood it's going to help your family may not, as she talked about with her son. But it helped others and it helped herself. But it's like that commitment to community is really, really important. The other thing is that losers always assemble in small groups and complain about the coaches and other players. Anywhere, in business, in recovery, anywhere. Losers always do that. They assemble in small groups and they go, Brenda could have done a better job as parent coordinator doing this or that. The program should do this. They always assemble in small groups and complain. Winners assemble as a team. And that's like, I have that hanging in the office. And that is like, those are like words to live by for our staff that we try to practice, because it is. And that's what we're constantly fighting, you know, and not just in the program, but in our culture, right? Like that's everywhere in our culture. Should we keep going? Like parent coordinators?
Yeah.
How much longer?
1 or 2 more questions. We got 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
We got 10 minutes. This is a good question. We hold the microphone, please. Been in recovery for 2 years, still experience PTSD, even though our teen is much healthier. What can I do to help myself overcome those episodes of PTSD? Does it eventually go away? Go ahead, you wanted the question.
Well, I think it's important because it takes us back to the very beginning that you came here because of your kid, but you're going to stay for you. And what most of us have gone through, and it doesn't matter what the degree of the trauma is or the pain that got you here, it was significant. And for many, it was extremely life-changing and certainly could cause PTSD. So what do? You work on you. There's EMDR therapy, there's equine therapy, there's one-on-one counseling, there's Al-Anon meetings, which eventually, if you are going to leave here and accept that your child is an addict, you want to get into a healthy Al-Anon group. Try many, because not every meeting is healthy. And how can you tell if a meeting is healthy or you're getting what you need? You're going to start feeling better, and you're going to grow, and you're going to be challenged. Kirk and I used to have a thing where we always laughed that, you know, gossip, we never heard gossip because people didn't come to us with gossip. If we heard about it, it was way on down the road, and then it was probably real. Personally, for me, the PTSD stuff, you claim it, you own it, it's real, it's what you're feeling, so do something about it. Choose your self-recovery.
Well, for me, it wasn't PTSD. But what I did have is depression. I had so much depression. And again, Cornerstone helped a lot, AA helped a lot, but you know what? Sometimes we need a little more care than that. And so I did go to a doctor, and I did get on a little medication until I could feel better without it. But don't be afraid. Do not be afraid. Do what you have to do to be healthy.
And I would say, because we spend a lot of time dealing with traumatic experience and PTSD in group and in our counseling practice, one of the things that's tremendously helpful in the process of working the steps, when you get to steps 4 and 5, that's the inventory. And that's it's tremendously therapeutic. I mean, doing an inventory, sharing it with somebody else, and God as you understand them, releasing the experience. That's so I would encourage, in addition to what these ladies said, being structured and disciplined in actually working the steps. You know, most of us don't do that, and most of the kids don't do that. You know, I like the idea of being strong and healthy, okay? Or I like the idea of a good relationship or good, real healthy family life. You know, I like the idea of being strong and healthy. I just don't like the idea of like getting up every day and working out and eating good. Okay? That's the truth. We all like, so there's two things, and this is like in my yoga practice that I've picked up on recently, is they talk a lot about being strong and getting strong, and how those are two entirely different things. I like the idea of being strong, right? Like looking strong and being a badass and all that stuff. I don't so much love the idea of getting strong, because that means like falling all over my yoga mat or looking stupid or coming to meetings every time and crying all the way through them. Getting strong is where it's at, guys. Embracing that part, that's where it's at. That's where the self-esteem is. That's where the growth is. That's where the connection is. You know, our egos want that get strong part. You know, that clear, still voice within me knows where I need to be is that willingness to be in that getting strong place. And it's like, what keeps us from being there? Fear. Fear of looking at our own stuff, right? Fear. Fear is what always holds us back from that. And that's the difference between, that's like just recovery talk. Like that's what happens when you're engaged in a recovery process, is you hear stuff like that and you go, yep, that's me, or that makes sense. When we're still in that fix-it mode, we're like, somewhere in our heads, we're already thinking to the next program where there's somebody that's going to tell us something that is more in narrative with what we want in our household, of just less stress. We don't want our kid acting out as much. We don't want the frickin' stress, all that. And that's cool, and that's our culture, but that's not us. I don't even remember what the question was. But what has been the most difficult part of your recovery journey, and how did you overcome it? I mean, there's two parts for me. Like, one is obviously the deaths that you experience in the field, but the thing that's like much more significant for me, because it's also different. You know, like when Tammy's talking about these young men that died in their mid-20s.
And girls.
But the time, I'm talking about the most recent ones.
Oh, yeah.
The time removed, you know, there's years and years and years removed. And so it's like sad. It's when the death happens within the program, okay? That is, you know, Brenda and I were talking about the first client we ever lost in the program. And we had like, when we started the program in 99, we had like phenomenal success rates. I mean, like through the charts, you know, almost all of our early kids that awakened in 99 and 2000 are still sober today. You know, which is, you know, I mean, you know, knock on wood, you know, part of that's us, but that also speaks to the family dynamics. But the first client we ever lost died of a drug overdose in his mom's house, 5 feet from her bedroom, because she thought she could keep him safe. And, you know, it's the clients that die while they're still in the program that is it's like the emotional part, you know, it's like intellectually, you can rationally, you know, it's like you go through the process, you know that you're not responsible, but the emotional part of the guilt, dealing with the guilt is tremendous. And, you know, I don't know how I got through it. I think just having loving people around me is probably the best way. I don't know if you ever really get all the way through it. We gotta keep it short. Huh?
Good, 2-minute warning.
Okay.
I agree with everything he said. It's obviously death. I would say this, that one of the most difficult things for me as a parent in early recovery was surrendering my child to God. Truly hitting my knees and surrendering and saying, I can't, God can, I think I'll let him. It was the hardest thing, and I still, if I see a movie sometimes or I hear stories, it is about surrender. And if your child is a true addict, the sooner you can accept that, do. And if they are just abusing, keep doing your program, keep staying connected, keep loving them, keep your boundaries, and keep strong.
Tammy, hardest thing for you in recovery? Or what was it? What
Well,
was the question?
certainly
What was the
it's-
most difficult part of your recovery journey? How'd you overcome it?
The steps. And I didn't want to do the steps in this program because I was already doing them in a different program, right? And I was like, I don't need to do that. Well, guess what I did? I did need to do it because it was the same kind of program, but a little different angle. And it was an emergency. And I needed to work on those steps in this angle here if my kid had a chance.
Emerson? Yep.
I believe that one of the hardest things for me was to be honest about the way that I felt. It's very easy for me to want to put on a pretty face and pretend everything's everything and placate and make people happy. And one of the hardest things was within my family, being honest about being hurt by my family and also being honest about what was going on in my life and what I was struggling with, because at first it was more of like a screw you guys, like I don't need you, and then it more became like a guilt or like shame of how much I'd hurt my family, and then it became like my family was a mess long before we came into Cornerstone, or long before I started using, and to bring my principles into that and to bring my hurt into that and to watch my closest friends like go back out, or my sponsees go back out, or my friends die, and to be honest about that hurt and really be still consistent in my steps and consistent in relying on my community and bringing that into my family, not isolating that into a bubble, was really difficult. And I think Kirk.
Yes, you just like.
What?
Shut up.
That was so good, Emerson. That was like the best answer on the panel. Okay. All right. This is why the clients hate me right here. Right? Yep. Yeah. Sorry for asking you. All right. Love you. Okay. Great questions. Sorry we didn't get to almost all of them. And we'll do this again sometime. What I don't get what you mean by a service opportunity.
I just meant if they were doing step, are they doing parent step?
Yeah, there's step study. It takes place in the fall. Yeah, so they'll be doing sign up. And what do you mean service opportunity?
People that have been through the program.
For you?
Well, maybe.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that at lunch. VIPs are going to lunch after this.
I'm not included.
Nope. But you can come to yoga on Tuesday.
I could do that either way.
Yeah, I know. All right.
If there's like a burning desire question.
No, we're past that. You guys were awesome, 100% awesome. Thank you for being real, authentic, and yourselves.